Reynolds grabbed Maria's jacket and pulled it off her shoulders. The four men thought they would see a weak woman underneath. They were wrong. On her back was a tattoo that made them go silent. The symbol of the 75th Ranger Regiment. Below it, another mark: JSOC. Joint Special Operations Command. The most elite soldiers in the world. Reynolds turned pale. That can't be real. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Maria Santos looked small standing with the other soldiers. She was only 5 feet 4 inches and looked like she weighed maybe 120 pounds. The other trainees whispered about her. Look at her. She's tiny. What's she doing here? Probably just here to fill some quota. This was SEER school: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Only the toughest soldiers came here. It was 3 weeks of hell designed to prepare them for the worst situations possible. Reynolds and his friends thought they owned the place. They were big guys, former Army Rangers who never let anyone forget it. They picked on smaller soldiers and acted like bullies. Maria had seen their type before. Many times. Chief Williams, the main instructor, called everyone together. Welcome to the hardest training you'll ever do. Some of you will quit. Some will break. The rest will learn what they're really made of. He walked down the line of soldiers. When he got to Maria, he stopped. Name and unit: soldier. Santos Maria. Staff Sergeant, Air Force. What's your job? Security Forces, Chief. Someone laughed behind her. Reynolds again. Security Forces? So you're basically a security guard. Williams looked angry. Got something to say, Ranger? Reynolds stood up straight. Just surprised to see Air Force here, Chief. Thought this was for real soldiers. Real soldiers? Williams walked back to Maria. And what makes you think she's not a real soldier? Look at her, Chief. She's tiny. Probably never been in a real fight. Maria kept staring straight ahead. She'd heard this all before. Let them think she was weak. It always worked in her favor. Well then, Williams said with a cold smile, let's see what our soldiers can really do. Everyone change into workout clothes. Physical test starts now. The group went to change clothes. Maria headed to the women's changing room, but Reynolds called after her. Hey Santos. Hope you brought your courage today. This isn't going to be like guarding a gate. She turned around slowly. I'll be fine, Reynolds. Worry about yourself. Right. We'll see how long the Air Force princess lasts. The changing room was basic: concrete walls, metal benches, the smell of sweat and cleaning products. Maria started changing when the door opened. Kowalski walked in with 2 other men. This was supposed to be the women's room, but they didn't care. Oops, Kowalski said, not moving. Wrong door. Maria grabbed her jacket. There are separate rooms for men and women. Relax, sweetheart. We're not looking at you. Reynolds pushed into the room. Though I have to say, you look even smaller without all that gear. You sure you're really military? Maybe you got lost. The Girl Scout camp is north of here. The men laughed. Maria put on her jacket, but Reynolds stepped closer. Actually, I'm curious about something. You say you're military, but you look like you've never been in a real fight. How about you prove it? Show us what you've got under all that gear. Back off, Reynolds. Or what? You'll file a complaint. He reached for her jacket. Come on, let's see what passes for muscle in the Air Force. Maria grabbed his wrist. Her grip was like steel. Don't. Oh, she's got some fight in her. Reynolds tried to pull free but couldn't. Boys, I think our little princess needs help getting undressed. Kowalski moved to help while the others blocked the door. Maria let go of Reynolds's wrist and stepped back. 4 men, all bigger than her, all thinking they were stronger. Last warning, she said quietly. Reynolds rubbed his wrist, getting angry. You know what, sweetheart? I think you've been lying to us. I don't think you're really military at all. So why don't you prove it? Take off that jacket and show us you've earned the right to be here. Before she could move, he grabbed her jacket and yanked it off her shoulders. The men crowded closer, expecting to see exactly what they thought, a soft civilian pretending to be a soldier. Instead they stopped breathing. Maria stood there in her black t-shirt. Through the thin fabric they could see her back clearly. And what they saw terrified them. Across her spine was a tattoo in bold black ink. The symbol of the 75th Ranger Regiment, the same unit Reynolds was so proud of. Below it were dates and locations that told the story of multiple combat tours and special missions. But that wasn't what made them step back in fear. Below the Ranger symbol was another mark, the sign of Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, the most elite special forces unit in the world. The soldiers who handled missions so secret that most people never even heard about them. Reynolds's face went white. That's impossible. Maria calmly put her jacket back on. Is there something else you need? You can't be. Kowalski couldn't finish his sentence. Women can't. JSOC doesn't. Doesn't what? Maria's voice was quiet and dangerous. Use women? Send women to combat? Let women in special operations. She buttoned her jacket slowly. You might want to learn more about the modern military. The room went silent except for the sound of air conditioning and other soldiers getting ready outside. The four men stood frozen, everything they thought they knew falling apart. Santos. Chief Williams yelled from outside. You ready? Let's go. Coming, Chief. She looked at the men one more time. Gentlemen, I suggest you focus on your own training. Something tells me you're going to need all the help you can get. She walked past them to the door, then stopped. Oh, and Reynolds? Next time you want to see a real soldier's credentials, try asking nicely. Better yet, try earning the right to ask. The door closed behind her. Outside, the physical test had started. Soldiers were at different stations doing pull-ups, push-ups, climbing ropes, and running obstacle courses. The desert heat was getting stronger, separating the strong from the weak. Maria walked up to Chief Williams, who was holding a clipboard and stopwatch. Ready for testing, Santos. Let's see what Air Force fitness looks like. She nodded, took off her jacket, and grabbed the pull-up bar. The tattoo was visible now to anyone watching, but she didn't care. The time for hiding was over. Ready, Chief. Go. Maria pulled herself up smoothly. Perfect form, controlled breathing. 1, 2, 5, 10. Other soldiers started watching, stopping their own exercises. 15, 20. Her movement stayed steady like a machine. At 25, a crowd gathered. At 30, even the instructors stopped to watch. At 35, Reynolds and his crew came out of the changing room, their faces still pale. 40 pull-ups. 45. No strain showing on her face, no shaking in her arms. Jesus, someone whispered. At 50, Chief Williams held up his hand. That's enough, Santos. Outstanding. She dropped from the bar, landing softly, barely breathing hard. What's next, Chief? Williams looked at his clipboard, but his expression had changed. He was looking at her with new respect. Push-ups. 2 minutes. Standard position. Maria dropped down without hesitation. When Williams started his stopwatch, she began. Perfect form, perfect rhythm, like a machine built for this purpose. The crowd got bigger. Other instructors came over. Word was spreading, someone was breaking records. After 2 minutes, Williams clicked his stopwatch. 147. New facility record. People clapped, but Maria was already standing, ready for the next test. This wasn't showing off, this was just performing at her normal level. Rope climb, Williams said, his voice now showing respect. 50 feet using only your arms. Record time is 38 seconds. Maria looked at the rope, planning her approach. Around her, conversation stopped. Even the other instructors were watching, sensing that something special was happening. She grabbed the rope and started climbing. Not fast, but with perfect technique. Hand over hand, legs locked around the rope, core muscles solid as steel. She reached the top in 28 seconds, touched the beam, and came down in controlled movements that showed thousands of hours of practice. 28 seconds, Williams announced. New record. More applause, but Maria barely noticed. She was in her element now, doing what she'd been trained for, what she'd done in places whose names were classified above everyone's security clearance. The final test was the obstacle course, a brutal series of walls, trenches, crawl spaces, and climbing challenges designed to push soldiers to their limits. The course record was held by a Navy SEAL who'd finished in 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Maria walked to the starting line, took off her jacket and hung it on a post. The tattoo was fully visible now in the harsh sunlight, and she could see recognition in the faces of instructors who knew what those marks meant. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, had appeared during the demonstration. He stood with Williams and the other senior staff, watching carefully. You sure about this, Santos? Williams asked quietly. That course has sent people to the hospital. I'm sure, Chief. Williams nodded and raised his stopwatch. Ready, go. Maria exploded from the starting line, but her pace was controlled and sustainable. She hit the first obstacle, a 12-foot wall, without slowing, using her momentum to carry her up and over in one smooth motion. The crowd followed her progress, calling out times. She was fast, but it was her technique that impressed the watching instructors. Every movement was precise, efficient, practiced. This wasn't someone pushing their limits, this was someone operating well within them. She ran through the tire section like a dancer, her feet finding the centers without looking. She crawled under the wire section without touching a single strand, her body staying perfectly flat. She crossed the rope traverse hand over hand, legs wrapped around the rope for stability. At the final obstacle, a 30-foot cargo net, she was still moving smoothly, breathing controlled, form perfect. She climbed the net, touched the top, and slid down the other side, landing at the finish line in a cloud of dust. Williams clicked his stopwatch and stared at it. 3 minutes, 47 seconds. New course record by 31 seconds. The silence that followed was complete. Maria stood at the finish line, barely winded, waiting for instructions. Around her, 36 other soldiers and a dozen instructors tried to understand what they'd just seen. Colonel Harrison stepped forward. He was tall and lean, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. His eyes were fixed on Maria's tattoo, reading the story it told. "Staff Sergeant Santos," he said formally. "Can I speak with you?" They walked away from the crowd, stopping near the headquarters building. Harrison studied her face, looking for something specific. "Afghanistan 2019, he said finally. "Operation Neptune's Fury." Maria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I don't know that operation, sir." "No, of course not. Officially, it never happened." Harrison looked around to make sure no one could hear. "But unofficially, a JSOC team went behind enemy lines to extract a high-value target. An intelligence asset had been discovered, Taliban closing in. Dangerous situation." He clicked a remote, and the screen showed statistics about survival rates in different scenarios. Physical fitness is important, but mental strength is crucial. The ability to stay focused, make smart decisions, and keep hope under extreme stress. These qualities separate survivors from victims. Williams clicked to the next slide, showing historical examples of military personnel who'd survived capture and long imprisonment. What these people had in common wasn't superior physical strength or extensive training, though those helped. What they shared was an unbreakable commitment to their mission, their fellow service members, and their own values. He paused, looking around the room. They understood that survival isn't about being the toughest or the loudest. It's about being the smartest, the most adaptable, and the most disciplined. It's about saving energy for when it matters, about picking your battles carefully, about never giving up even when everything seems hopeless. Maria found herself thinking about Afghanistan, about the 18 minutes that had changed her life. She remembered the cold calculation required to call in airstrikes on her own position, the absolute certainty that her teammates would complete the mission regardless of what happened to her. "Survival," Williams continued, "is also about understanding that everyone has something to contribute. The person you might dismiss as weak or inexperienced might have knowledge or skills that could save your life. Respect for your fellow service members isn't just a nice idea, it's necessary for survival." Several soldiers looked toward Reynolds, who was staring at the screen, his jaw tight with embarrassment. The lecture continued for 2 hours, covering psychological preparation, stress training, and mental exercises designed to maintain thinking ability under extreme conditions. Maria absorbed the information professionally, though much of it was review for someone with her background. When they broke for lunch, Martinez walked with her toward the dining hall. "You're being pretty quiet in there," he observed. "Just listening." "You've heard this before, haven't you? The survival psychology stuff." Maria shrugged. "Some of it." "Right." Martinez smiled. "Same way you'd heard some of the physical training techniques before, I bet." They joined the line for food, standard military food designed for nutrition rather than taste. Maria selected a balanced meal systematically, protein, carbohydrates, vegetables in proportions calculated to maintain energy levels throughout the afternoon training. They found a table in the corner where they could eat in peace. Several other soldiers joined them, a mix of experienced personnel who recognized competence when they saw it and younger troops who were smart enough to learn from example. The conversation was professional, focused on the morning's lessons and the challenges ahead. Maria contributed when asked direct questions but mostly listened, gathering information about her fellow soldiers, assessing their strengths and weaknesses. Across the room, Reynolds sat with his reduced crew, their voices occasionally rising in animated discussion. She could feel their looks, their obvious discomfort with how dramatically the morning had changed the group's dynamics. "They're not taking it well," Martinez observed quietly. "They'll adapt or they won't," Maria replied. "Not my problem." "Actually, it might be." Martinez nodded toward the instructor's table where Chief Williams was deep in conversation with Colonel Harrison. "Something tells me the staff has noticed the tension. They might decide to address it directly." Maria considered this. Military training environments were carefully controlled systems. Instructors monitored group dynamics constantly, intervening when necessary to maintain discipline and ensure effective learning. A group of soldiers harboring resentment against another soldier could disrupt the entire course. "What do you think they'll do?" asked Johnson, a young Army specialist who'd been listening. "Depends," Martinez said. "Could separate the troublemakers, could use it as a teaching moment, could let it play out naturally and see who adapts." Maria finished her meal efficiently. "Whatever they decide, the course continues. We focus on learning the material and completing the training." "Spoken like a true professional," Martinez said admiringly. After lunch, they moved to the outdoor training area for practical survival instruction. The afternoon heat was approaching its peak, turning the desert air into a shimmering furnace that would test endurance and water management. Chief Williams had set up several stations covering different aspects of wilderness survival: shelter building, water collection, fire starting, and finding food. The soldiers would rotate through each station, learning hands-on techniques that could mean the difference between life and death in a real survival situation. Maria approached the first station where Instructor Peterson was demonstrating shelter construction using minimal materials. The lesson was detailed and practical, covering everything from site selection to insulation techniques. "The key," Peterson explained, "is understanding that your shelter doesn't need to be comfortable, it needs to keep you alive. In desert environments, that means protection from temperature extremes, wind, and potential predators." He pointed to the basic lean-to structure they'd built. This shelter would maintain core body temperature in conditions ranging from 40 degrees to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. "It's not pretty, but it works." Maria examined the construction critically, noting the angle of the roof, the placement of insulation materials, the drainage considerations. It was solid work, though she could see several improvements that could increase efficiency and durability. "Questions?" Peterson asked. Maria raised her hand. "What about concealment? In an evasion scenario, visibility to aerial reconnaissance could be a factor." Peterson nodded approvingly. "Excellent point. In a tactical situation, you'd want to consider natural camouflage, light discipline, and smoke control from any fires." He studied her face. "You've had SEER training before?" "Some related training, yes." "I thought so. Your questions show practical experience rather than just book knowledge." They moved to the next station where Instructor Davis was demonstrating water collection techniques. The lesson covered everything from solar stills to plant sources, with emphasis on purification methods that could be implemented with minimal equipment. "Water is your first priority," Davis explained. "You can survive weeks without food but only days without water. In desert environments, that timeline becomes even more critical." She demonstrated several collection methods, including digging for groundwater, collecting dew, and extracting moisture from plant sources. Each technique was practical and field-tested, designed for real-world application rather than just theory. Maria participated actively, her movements showing familiarity with the techniques being taught. When Davis asked for volunteers to practice the water collection methods, Maria stepped forward without hesitation. Her execution was flawless. She selected an optimal dig site based on vegetation patterns and ground composition, excavated efficiently to minimize energy use, and built a collection system that maximized output while preventing contamination. "Outstanding work," Davis said. "You've clearly done this before." "Thank you, ma'am." Other soldiers watched with increasing respect. It was becoming clear that Maria wasn't just physically capable, she had extensive practical knowledge that could only come from real-world experience. At the fire starting station, Instructor Rodriguez covered multiple ignition methods designed for different conditions and available materials. The techniques ranged from traditional friction methods to improvised chemical reactions, each with specific applications and limitations. "Fire serves multiple survival functions," Rodriguez explained. "Warmth, cooking, water purification, signaling, and psychological comfort. But it also creates risks: smoke signature, light signature, fuel consumption, and potential for spreading." Maria demonstrated skill with every technique presented, starting fires quickly and efficiently with various methods. Her movements were economical and practiced, showing the muscle memory that comes from extensive field experience. "How long did it take you to get that good with the bow drill method?" asked Johnson. "Practice," Maria replied simply. Reynolds, who was at the same station, watched her demonstrations with obvious frustration. His own attempts at fire starting were competent but awkward, clearly learned from books rather than practical application. "Must be nice having all that experience," he muttered. Maria looked at him. Everyone starts somewhere. Keep practicing. Right. Thanks for the advice. His tone was bitter, embarrassed. Rodriguez noticed the tension and stepped in smoothly. Reynolds, let's work on your hand positioning. The key is maintaining consistent pressure while varying speed. The final station covered finding food and basic field medicine, skills that could extend survival time and maintain health in harsh environments. Instructor Thompson demonstrated edible plant identification, basic wound treatment, and improvised medical supplies. Maria absorbed the information quietly, though it was clear she already had advanced medical knowledge. When Thompson asked about treating shock in a resource-limited environment, her answer was comprehensive and sophisticated, showing training well beyond basic first aid. Have you worked as a medic? Thompson asked. Cross-training, Maria replied. Everyone in my unit was required to maintain advanced medical certifications. Thompson nodded, accepting the answer without pressing for details. Military units often had complex training requirements that varied based on mission and classification level. As the afternoon session ended, Chief Williams called the group together for review and preparation for evening activities. The soldiers assembled in formation, their uniforms dusty and sweat-stained from the desert training. Outstanding work today, Williams announced. You've shown solid understanding of basic survival techniques and good adaptation to challenging environmental conditions. He paused, studying the group dynamics. The morning's events had clearly shifted relationships among the soldiers, creating new alliances and highlighting existing tensions. Tonight we begin resistance training, Williams continued. This phase will test your psychological strength and commitment to military values under simulated captivity conditions. The training is intense and realistic, designed to prepare you for potential capture scenarios. Several soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Resistance training was the most challenging aspect of SEER school, involving psychological pressure, physical discomfort, and moral dilemmas designed to test adherence to the code of conduct. Remember, Williams said, the goal isn't to break you, it's to give you experience with pressure techniques you might face in actual captivity. The better you understand these methods, the better prepared you'll be to resist them. He dismissed the group to evening dinner with instructions to report to the resistance training facility at 2,100 hours. As the soldiers dispersed, Maria found herself walking alongside Martinez and several others who'd naturally moved toward her leadership. Nervous about tonight? Martinez asked. Maria considered the question. Prepared, she said finally. That's not the same thing. No, she agreed. It's not. They ate dinner quietly, each soldier processing the day's experiences and preparing mentally for the challenges ahead. The resistance training phase would push them beyond their comfort zones, testing not just their individual strength but their commitment to supporting fellow service members under extreme stress. Maria finished her meal and walked outside to watch the sunset. The desert sky was painted in brilliant oranges and purples, beautiful in its harsh magnificence. In a few hours, that same landscape would become the backdrop for some of the most challenging training in the military. She thought about Afghanistan again, about the real captivity experiences that had informed the training she was about to undergo. The simulated pressure would be intense, but it would lack the life-or-death terror of genuine combat situations. Still, she knew the value of the training. Not everyone had been tested under real combat conditions, and those who hadn't deserved every advantage preparation could provide. If her presence here could help other service members survive actual captivity, the experience would be worthwhile. Behind her, she heard footsteps approaching. She turned to see Colonel Harrison walking toward her, his expression thoughtful. Mind if I join you? He asked. Of course not, sir. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the western sky. The temperature was beginning to drop, offering the first relief from the day's brutal heat. You handled today well, Harrison said finally. Professional throughout, despite some challenging interpersonal dynamics. Thank you, sir. The resistance training tonight will be different. More personal. The instructors will use whatever psychological pressure points they can identify to test your limits. Maria nodded. She understood the warning. Resistance training instructors were skilled at finding psychological vulnerabilities and exploiting them in controlled but intense ways. My offer from this morning still stands, Harrison continued. We could use someone with your experience and temperament on the instructor staff. Think about it during the resistance phase. See if teaching these skills appeals to you. Yes, sir. Harrison turned to leave, then paused. Maria? What happened in Afghanistan? That kind of experience changes people. Sometimes in ways that don't show up immediately. If you ever need to talk to someone who understands, my door is open. She met his eyes, seeing genuine concern rather than just professional obligation. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. After he left, Maria remained outside until full darkness fell over the compound. The desert night was crisp and clear, stars visible in numbers impossible to see from populated areas. She used the quiet time to center herself, to prepare mentally for the challenges ahead. At 2,100 hours, she reported to the resistance training facility along with the other soldiers. The building was stark and in stit.